Hi Vinayak.
I'm sorry.
So today we have Vinayak, who is the founder of Value Vault Consulting Private Limited. So one of the leading firms for accounting in Bangalore. They specialize for startup companies, and they also manage the accounts of Cloud on Hire. So welcome
Yeah,
Vinayak
thanks
once
for the
again.
opportunity. Thanks again.
So today we will discuss with Vinayak on what are the various ways in which we set up a company for startup, what are the rules and regulations, what is it that you need to think and plan ahead before going ahead with your venture. Let us start firstly. How do we start a company? Because there are different ways.
Yeah.
There is a proprietorship, partnership, and people are always confused. What is the right way to start? So, what is your suggestion?
Yeah, so basically it depends on the requirement of the business and the size of the business that you're going to scale. Generally, there are four types of an organizations. One is a sole proprietorship organization, which is the basic. Anyone can start with it, any individual. And then next comes a regular partnership firm, which two people or more can get along together and then start with it. So these two come under the least compliances. The compliances for these two form of the organizations are the least, considering the other. Then comes the limited liability partnership, which is called as LLP in general parlance. So that is a little sophisticated form of a partnership, wherein your presence is known throughout the, by you will be registered with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and then anyone can search your basic details like your company's name, who are the partners in it, and what's the latest details, annual returns filed. And then comes a private limited company. So then in companies there are two things. So one is private limited companies and the other is a limited company. So generally any startup would go for a private limited company because it just requires two people to start with, and then a very minimum capital of just about 1 lakh or so to start with the companies. So when we talk about private limited and the LLPs, it is slightly higher on the compliances. Like there are certain procedures and formalities which you need to compulsorily adhere to. If not, then there are penalties for it. Even some penalties are periodic basis, some penalties are on per day basis. So depending upon what is the requirement and the size of the organization, one can plan between the type of the organization that he wants to go for.
Okay. Assume that I have decided to resign my job. I want to start a company. Can I go ahead with a sole proprietorship initially and then move on to limited liability or private limited company?
Yeah, so sole proprietorship converting into a company is not happening. But however, partnership firm can be converted into a private limited company once the business develops. So there is provision for that. However, if you want to start as a sole proprietorship, then you have to leave this business as it is and then go for a higher level of organization. That is a private limited company.
Okay, I see. And what about tax liability? Is there any advantage of going one over the other?
Yeah. So talking about the first slab, that is the proprietorship or this individual proprietorship thing. There is a very lesser tax because until you reach the tax slabs, that is 12 lakhs for the current year, there is no tax at all for an individual. The income should be up to 12 lakhs, then there is no tax. Even after that, there are different slab rates at which the tax is charged. However, for a regular partnership and an LLP, there is a flat rate of 30% plus 4% of cess on whatever profit earned by the company and by the firm. Coming to companies, earlier even companies were taxed at 30%, but of late from the past 5-6 years, the government has recognized the need of subsidizing the rate for startup. They have brought it down to 25% for private limited companies if they fulfill certain conditions, which generally all startups can do. The tax rate is 25% plus cess. So, considering between tax point of view, it could either be an individual or a private limited company if you're considering the income tax point of view. And there are other benefits available to private limited company like registration under Startup India program, which is not available for the sole proprietorship or the partnership firms. It's available only for the private limited companies. So there are also some income tax benefits if one is registered under that.
Oh, I see. Nice. And what about the compliances like professional tax, ESI, GST? Is there any difference between the different types of companies?
Yeah. So GST as it is, there is no, it's not dependent on the type of the company. It's only dependent on the turnover a person makes. So once you make 20 lakhs if it's a service organization or 40 lakhs if it's a trading and goods organization, they have to register under GST. Until then, there is no liability to register for any kind of the organization, be it a private limited partnership or a sole proprietorship. However, coming to ESI and PF compliances, for PF it is 20 employees and then ESI it is 10 employees or more. In case of private limited companies, now the government has mandated compulsory registration of ESI and PF along with the company registration itself. So once the general thing is that company should start compliance with it within 6 months, or if the company has still not reached that limit, they have to file a declaration that we have still not reached the specified limit for PF and ESI, hence they are not going to comply. But otherwise, compliance becomes mandatory.
I see. What about in case of software exports, STPI, is it applicable for all of them?
Yeah, that is applicable to all of them, irrespective of their nature of organization, because that is something related to export of software.
Okay.
Yeah.
One more thing which many of my team members ask is, how can you decrease the tax liability? So some of them ask whether they, instead of being an employee, can they start a sole proprietorship, and that way can it reduce their tax liability?
So yeah, I understand this is a very important question and concern for everyone because of the tax rates in our
Yes.
country. So basically, see, there are two aspects to look at it. If you are covered as an employee under an organization, there are benefits like insurance that you get. There are benefits like PF and PF. ESI is covered under the insurance, PF that you get, and even a person goes for a loan, a salaried person is always preferred than a self-employed professional always. So these are some of the benefits for being under salary. But however, every salaried person is taxed at the highest rate because there is no way he can avoid it. Everything is deducted at the source by the employer itself, and there is not much he can do about it. However, coming to the alternate model of being a consultant by registering as a sole proprietorship firm, he definitely saves on tax, but then he has to follow certain compliances, like he has to register his business under shops and commercial establishments, which is required for Karnataka to operate commercially. And then if his turnover again reaches 20 lakhs for a service person, then he has to register under GST also. So that becomes the compliance part on him. But otherwise, yeah, we can save on some taxes.
Okay. So I think you have given a lot of valuable information. Is there any other tips, where people can save on tax, or companies can provide benefit which will decrease the taxable income of the?
Yeah, there are certain things that companies follow. See, for example, instead of including it as a part of salary, companies can give the conveyance or petrol reimbursement or some education reimbursement, medical reimbursement, wherein the company bears it as its own cost, but doesn't include it in the employee CTC. That way, some of the expenses which otherwise the employee would pay tax on will be covered on by the company, and the employee will not pay tax on such things. So, just general examples of these are like car petrol reimbursement or house rent reimbursement, these kind of things.
So what happens if an employee opts for this and he is unable to use that medical reimbursement? Then what happens to that amount?
So that amount then becomes not usable for him because that's only based on the usage that the company will be reimbursing. So these are just examples. Not limited to that. There are many ways. Even bigger companies even offer vehicles in that scheme. They give it on lease and operate, and then finally the employee buys it. Initially, it will be in the company's name. So the company will pay the installments, but the employee will be using it. And then later on, the employee has an option to buy it. So this way, they don't pay the employee directly, but they give a benefit to them.
Okay. Yeah. There are things like employee stock options and stuff like that. So that can be done only with a private limited company.
Yes, that's because a private limited company has a shareholding. So shares can be offered only in this kind of an organization. Yeah.
Okay. So that is the other advantage of having a private.
For retaining employees, it becomes no advantage.
Okay. Yeah. See, one thing which many companies are not aware is about this MSME.
Yeah.
So how do you register, and what are the benefits of MSME?
So MSME registration is a simple online process wherein different categories are derived upon the different turnover limits. So up to 10 crores it is micro industry, up to 100 crore it is small industry, and up to 500 crore it's a medium industry. Beyond that it's anyways large. So this registration will not be applicable. So this registration, once a person is registered in this, it gives an added advantage. There is a clause in this program that says any MSME registered dealer, if he supplies a goods or service which is undisputed by the buyer, he has to clear these dues within 45 days of the invoice. So if he delays paying this, then he has to pay interest on this. And then even in the recent income tax amendments, Income Tax Act has disallowed dues to MSME beyond 45 days. That's actually creating a lot of problems in the industry, because in general also there are certain payment terms within 60 days is the norm. But because of this rule, they are facing difficulties. But however, there's no workaround for this as of now. So that is one advantage. And then certain banks loans, there are some benefits. So based on the nature of organization, bank gives some collateral free loans for micro industries. Some programs are there. Even apart from this, many other programs are there specific to industries, the government schemes. So yeah, these are the benefits, and it's a very simple registration process. It's just online,
Okay.
nothing major.
Okay. Yeah, one more question. So, do we need a chartered accountant for all types of companies, or
Good.
what does it depend on?
Good question. So this sole proprietorship and partnership doesn't immediately require any CA to be onboarded for the for the works of the company. But when you come talk about a private limited company, it's a mandate that you hire a chartered accountant, and it's a mandate that you file a statutory audit report year on year. That's been mandated by the company law for the private limited companies as well as the LLPs. But the other forms like regular partnership and the sole proprietorship doesn't require this. Only if they feel the need, they can hire one, or if the turnover process specified limits for audit.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Now coming to the venture capital, if I am a proprietorship or a private limited, where will a venture capital firm invest? Will they invest in a sole proprietorship company, or won't they invest?
Yeah, that's always in a private limited company, because of the obvious reason that this company, the data is available publicly on the MCA portal, when people can see their file balance sheets and who is the auditor, who are the directors, who are the shareholders, and what is the turnover, what is the nature of business. All these basic details of the company's operations are available on the MCA website. Anyone can just pay that amount for that, viewing those documents, and they can view it. So any investor, from his point of view, will want to invest in a private limited company because it has a better standing in the market, and details are easily accessible. And one more thing, what they look into is a director of a defaulting company cannot be again a director in another company. So he's, once a company is disqualified, he has certain limitations. He cannot join another company. So that's how it's kind of a you can say check on misuse of funds. So that's a better way of organization when funding and all comes into picture.
Okay.
And also that in case of private limited company, there is an option to part with the share capital and then give the other person his shares. But in case of a proprietorship, that doesn't happen. Whatever is it, it's based on the person individual's capital. Even in case of partnership, they can join in as a partner. But again, coming to the weightage and the visibility, transparency, companies are always preferred by investors.
Okay. Question. In a private limited, what does that limited mean? What is the significance of limited?
So limited signifies that it's a limited liability company, wherein a person is liable to pay only up to whatever his share capital is limited. I mean, if assuming a person is agreed to pay 1 lakh of share capital into that company, so he can be asked to pay in case of debts of the company. He can be asked to pay only that 1 lakh. He cannot be called for to pay beyond that. But in case of a regular partnership and individual, if the company goes into losses, the proprietor or the individual will be under full liability to repay it out of his personal debts.
Okay.
However, in the company, each shareholder is limited to pay only the amount of share capital that he has agreed to invest or he has invested in. He cannot be, infinitely liable for any of the company's debts or the losses. However, there is a provision in the company law which says if there is evidence that these activities were done to defraud the public's money, then there is something called lifting of corporate veil, where then company will not be looked as a separate entity, and the people behind it, their liability will be unlimited.
Oh, I see.
So there are provisions when fraud or something happens, but this is generally not applicable in wherein regular operational losses are there.
Okay, yeah. I think, a lot of valuable information from Vinayak, and I will share the contacts of Vinayak. So feel free to contact him in case of any accounting needs. So in case of CRM needs, anyway, Cloud on Hire, you can always get back to us. Thank you, everyone. Thanks,
That was a
Vinayak.
great meeting. Thank you so much.